My name is Steve Holmes and I'm coming to you from the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. Originally I'm from Waikanae Beach, which is just north of Wellington in the North Island of New Zealand. I'm married with two children, married to Claire, and our children Zach, who's now living in London, and Georgia is living in Vancouver. Passions, cycling, running, rugby, golf, pretty much all sport, and being a Kiwi obviously I watch a lot of rugby. In the background you'll see the bikes. I spend almost every day on the bike, have done for years, and really enjoy it. Gold Coast is a great place for cycling and running and things like that because you can do that every day of the year here. As for the other side of my life, the work side, I've been in business since I was 25, have had a number of businesses, and my wife Claire has joined me in that over the years, so we work together, and these days from home. I was diagnosed in November 2016 with cholangiocarcinoma. What is cholangiocarcinoma? It's a cancer of the bile ducts which directly impacts the liver, gallbladder, stomach, and the pancreas. I was out riding my bike on what we call a Saturday morning coffee ride, which is not hard, about 40 k's. We ride from Main Beach on the Gold Coast to Burleigh and back. And on that ride, it's flat, it's not challenging, it's just an easy one. We spend more time having coffee than we do riding. But early on in the ride, maybe 5 or 10 k's into the ride, I started to lose energy quite dramatically. So in cycling terms, of those who know about cycling, I just dropped into the back and tried to get a draft off the other guys and girls that were in the group with us. I couldn't even keep up with that. I was losing energy fast, like a bad flu really, and it's peak when you lose energy. So I said to him, look, I'll turn around here and I'll meet you back at the coffee shop. So I headed back for the coffee shop, and out on my way back there, so like I said, I only had 10 k's to go, I continued to lose energy and I was really struggling. So I made the decision to shortcut it straight back to home, got inside, saw my wife and went straight to the couch, as if I had just finished a 120-kilometre hill ride and I'd given it everything I got. I was completely wasted. What happened from there was it just didn't change. I just got weaker and weaker. And then over that week, I noticed that my stools had turned to a clay or a white colour more than clay, and that my eyes showed a slight tinge of yellow. And I said that to my wife Claire, and she looked it up immediately and said, well, look, you've got a liver problem possibly, and then booked an appointment with our doctor just below where we live. So that was the next day, and I went and saw the doctor. She took a blood draw straight away, and then the day after that, she came back and said, I think you better come in. And I did, and she said, look, nothing serious, but I think you need an ultrasound. So she booked that, and I was in an ultrasound within, I think the next day actually. I went in there, and the ultrasound, the guy that was taking it took his time, and he said, look, I think, is it possible that you could stay? We've got a CT scanner here, and I'd like you to have a CT scan. So I waited, and I had a CT of what they were looking at, and then I was back at the doctors, and they said, look, you need to see a surgeon. You've got a lesion in your bile ducts. It could be nothing, but we need to get it inspected. So we went, and I was booked in, and I had an ECRP, I think that's what it is, and they took scrapings or brushings off that, and it was decided that I had a cholangiocarcinoma extrahepatic. That means that the lesion is in the bile duct but outside the liver. After being diagnosed, I was immediately scheduled into a Whipple operation, which they allowed 8 to 12 hours, and they needed to have an ICU bed on call for 2 weeks. So in other words, you go into the operation, and then if successful, go straight into ICU, which is what happened. The intention was it's a multi-organ operation, and I can list off what they took out of me. It might be a little gory, but they took 80% of my stomach, 95% of my bile duct, all my duodenum, 33% of my pancreas, gallbladder, and a couple of lymph nodes, and they may have missed some other things. Altogether, to date, I've had 25 hours of operations to overcome this cancer, and give myself the best chance. Several weeks after the operation, and I'm now out of hospital, I had to go back and have a consultation with the surgeons. So I met with Harold Puhala is number 2 surgeon, Dr. Kwong, and he delivered the news that it had been successful and that I had clear negative margins. So it was really good news to hear. But then he went on to say that, however, this particular cancer has a high recurrence rate. And if it did reoccur, then I'd probably only have 6 months to live. He also went on to say that chemotherapy and radiotherapy were ineffective, and he wasn't going to refer me to that sort of treatment. So I was really, really taken back with that. He then went on to say, however, Steve, I have been looking into this a bit further, and perhaps I can show you this opportunity of going on a trial called the Hamburg Trial, and it's been run out of Royal Brisbane by Dr. Matthew Burge. So I said yes. I looked at my wife, she said yes. He said, okay, well, look, I'll tee it up and you go and do the rest of your appointments and we'll see what we can do. So that was a critical turning point. I just didn't know how critical at the time. So not long after I met with Dr. Kwong and I'd signed up for the Hamburg trial with Dr. Matthew Burge and his team at Royal Brisbane, I was at home still recovering, and I'd had a backpack on my stomach for all my wounds, and I had a sudden aneurysm of the main hepatic artery, although I didn't know that was occurring. This is blood that had burst, coming from the burst aneurysm and straight into my stomach, and I started to vomit up blood and fell unconscious. My wife had to deal with that. She had to get an ambulance and get me to hospital in a very, very short amount of space of time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. I think that part took 15 minutes. So Gold Coast Hospital and the ambulance service were incredible. Also, another factor in saving my life at that time was Dr. Tom Snow was still on site in the hospital grounds and was able to attend to me straight away. He's a interventional radiologist, I think they call him, and I went into an operation immediately, and it was touch and go as to whether I'd live. So I pulled through that and found myself back in an ICU unit, very, very weak, incredibly weak, and having to recover again. What the big worry was is that I couldn't go into the trial, the Hamburg trial, if I was not in physically good nick. So it became a little bit of a race to get all the numbers right, my wounds right, otherwise I just wouldn't be accepted. So I managed to make it and recover successfully from the aneurysm to make the Hamburg trial on time with Dr. Matthew Burge at Royal Brisbane. That's a 6-month delivery of GemCis chemotherapy and then an 18-month follow-up. So I'm on the trial. It was hideous, to say the least, and other people probably won't want to hear that, but it was hideous, and I wasn't a good patient and found myself curled up in a ball for 6 days a week, and the day that I came right was the day the next delivery was occurring. So I'm just short of 6 months on my delivery on the trial, and my scans showed that I had a metastatic breakout, quite a significant one across my top of my liver into my ribcage area, which explained the increasing pain and the inability to breathe correctly. So I was called into Matthew's office, and he explained to me what was going on. I was very weak and almost not there, not present. But Matthew said to me, look, we've got something, Steve, that can help you. I've got something. And he looked really positive. I couldn't see any positive at that time. He said, look, we can put you on this trial. It's called Keynote, and we'll need to get you on it straight away. So that was the next phase. I personally couldn't see through where I was at that time. It was just too weak. In qualifying for a trial, you have to tick off certain boxes, and Keynote 158, an international trial that involved delivering Keynote, requires that patients meet certain mutational, they tick off certain mutations, and mine was PD-L1 and MSi-High. This had been discovered by taking an IHC test. Dr. Matthew Burge would have organised that from my original surgery, and that I had both those biomarkers. I didn't know, I've never heard of those at the time and didn't know this, but he did. And that met the requirement to enter into that particular trial. So I had to dry out for 4 weeks from my chemotherapy infusions, and then I was able to enter the trial. You go through a lot of documentations, and on the day I always remember that I had to sign these documents, and I didn't have the strength to lift my hand to sign the document. So Matthew had to hold my hands, so, and the pen in my hand so I could sign. And then I had somebody else in the room. There was a lot of people in the room, and I was like a little kid in the corner. And somebody was delivering the information, the side effects, and all the rest of the things to make me aware of what I was signing. But of course, Claire was next to me, listening and reading as well. So that was a significant day. That contract is the biggest contract I've ever signed in my life. Yet I didn't know it. So that was done, and I made it onto the trial by a whisker, and the next step was to actually get Katarina into my arm. The day came at Royal Brisbane Hospital in the same ward that I normally get my chemotherapy delivered, and it's Katarina Day. I'm incredibly weak, and I'm not very present of mind. I'm just labouring through every moment of every day. I get into the same chair, and they deliver the Katarina. Now, this is only a 30-minute delivery, and the build-up to and the follow-up it means that I'm there for 2 or 3 hours, where as opposed to my previous 6 months, I've been there 12 hours. So I was there from dark to dark. So I've had Katarina, and I'm at home, and day 3 was a significant day looking back, when I'm lying on the couch. I don't want to be in bed anymore, and I'm lying on the couch in a certain position because of the pain. It's very difficult to breathe, and an incredible pain up my ribs, into my back. It never leaves you. It went. It was just gone. I'm going to lie in a certain position, and I didn't need to because the pain had disappeared. I said to Claire, something's wrong. And she said, what? I said, the pain's gone. And she said, what could possibly be wrong with that? And I said, well, okay, if you put it that way. She said, well, you did have Katarina 3 days ago. And I said, oh, yeah, I guess yeah, I did. I couldn't even remember. I thought I was still on chemo. I said, well, if the pain is growing because the tumours are growing, could it be that if the pain dissipates or goes, the tumours are shrinking? And then she said, well, of course. And I'm going, oh, let's not talk about this anymore because I'll get ahead of myself. And I don't want to create false hope. So we ended that conversation. Day 4, I started getting flu-like symptoms, which set in fairly quick. The cytokine storm, I guess. And then by day 5, I'm in huge cold sweats. I'm hot, I'm cold, and I'm spiraling down quickly into what I would describe as a really, really severe flu at that stage. I then got to a point where I really thought I was going to be on my last breath. I couldn't sit up again. I was in overcome extreme tiredness and weakness and sweating and hot and cold, and temperatures were spiking. I think it was 2 days before I was due for my second infusion, it just magically broke, like a storm that broke, and it was as if I'd never had anything wrong with me. I felt amazing. I was weak, but I felt amazing. So we went to the second infusion day. I met Matt. I told him about the pain dissipating. He smiled. I didn't pursue the conversation, and I had that next one, and it was so easy. So I made it through that first 3 weeks, and magically come right at the end of the 3 weeks. But we didn't know whether the Katarina was working properly or truly until we'd had that first scan. So I think it was about 8 weeks or 9 weeks into it, I was due for my first scan, which I had. And look, as anybody who's had cancer knows, when you're going back to get your scan results, those days you have your scan, in my case on a Thursday, and you wait till the following Tuesday to meet with the oncologist, Dr. Matthew Burge, and then he will deliver the results. And he brings them up on his computer screen. So I'd already seen the tumours that prolificated on my liver the last time we looked at it, some 8 weeks and 10 weeks before. And he rolled up the screen, and he had a smile, and I looked at the screen and I said, because I'm used to looking at these things by now, where are they? Where are the tumours? I can't see them. He said, that's just the point, Steve. I said, what do you mean? He said, there's none there. And I said, well, I was just gobsmacked. Claire was gobsmacked. There was nothing on the screen. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, they're all gone. He said, it's working. get out of that office and go live life. So that was look, it's one of those moments where you think you're going to jump and do a dance, a jig, a party, but really it was almost dead silence. Nothing was said. It was really quiet. So Claire and I left that office, and it's an hour and a half drive back home from Brisbane to the Gold Coast. And I think for most of that ride, we didn't say a word. That was an incredible moment. So no tumours. Back on the Keynote 3 weeks later. So that's it's a difficult time. You'd think that you'd be jumping for joy, but boy, that was a very emotional time. Dr. Matthew Burge was starting to say, look, Steve, this is working really well. Maybe you should consider removing yourself off the actual treatment. I'd remain on the trial to 2023 and be monitored, but there's no need to continue on Keynote. The Keynote arm of it is 2 years, and I've just gone past 1 year. So I guess it took me another few months to decide in my own mind and voluntarily remove myself. As Matthew's rationale was, look, Steve, it's probably doing you more harm than good now by remaining on there. It's done its job. I made that decision, and it was 15 months that I ended it. And that was a significant mental crutch. It's a mental moment in your life where you have to let go. You think you're going to get it straight back if you let go. So at 15 months, I ceased having Keynote, but remained on my regular checkups.